1600 years ago, the first heresy the early church faced questioned Jesus' divinity. It caused a bloody struggle that ended in Jesus being declared the Son of God.
The more Jesus is exalted and his mother, the more that the family are simply ignored. They're just dropped. They're just part of the picture, but not in any real sense. Jesus isn't really given a proper family, and so they're just simply seen as stepbrothers or cousins.
Excuse me, what are these made of?
These are made out of the olive wood.
Yeah.
It's all hand carved.
Yeah. Now tell me who the characters are in the nativity scene.
Now you have the Holy Family.
Yep,
Mary,
the Holy Family, Mary, Joseph,
and the baby.
and the baby. The earliest texts of the New Testament say absolutely nothing about Mary's virginity. In fact, Paul's letter to the Galatians describes Jesus as being born of a woman, not a virgin.
One of the interesting things about the New Testament is that the earliest passages don't seem to know anything at all about the virgin birth. Paul never mentions it at all, and the earliest gospel, Mark, doesn't mention it either. Even John's Gospel, which has a fairly exalted picture of Mary, doesn't seem to know anything about the virgin birth. The traditions are simply in Luke's Gospel and Matthew's Gospel. The whole point is to show that Jesus is truly the Son of God. And the clearest way that you can do that, metaphorically and using picture language, is to say that Mary was a virgin.
Do you do Jesus' family? Mary, Joseph, Jesus, James, Jude, Salome, and so you've only got part of the Holy Family. You haven't got the full family of Mary and Joseph.
No, but if you want, we can do it for you.
You can do that for me.
Because it's our work.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Of all the churches, the Roman Catholic has done the most to erase all mention of Jesus' real blood family. 1600 years ago, one of its most revered theologians, Jerome, devised another theory. He claimed that Joseph had a brother, and this brother was married to somebody also called Mary, and it's their children who are described in the New Testament as the brothers and sisters of Christ. A very clever theory, and one that helped to demote the brothers and sisters of Christ to nothing more than cousins. So according to the Roman Catholic Church, not only was Mary not the mother of Jesus' brothers and sisters, but Joseph wasn't their father either. In fact, the only reason why they needed Joseph was for his pedigree, a genealogy that fulfilled the prophecy that the Messiah would come from the house of David, Israel's ancient king. Up here on the walls are the remains of a mosaic that's over 1,000 years old. It depicts Jesus' genealogy going back 1,000 years directly to the house of David. The only problem is that most scholars now agree these genealogies were created by the gospel writers to fit the new church's emerging theology. Bethlehem has one of the earliest shrines dedicated to the Virgin Mary, a cave where she is supposed to have lived for a time with Jesus.
The tradition here is that shortly after the birth of Jesus, the Holy Family came here where the Virgin was nursing the baby for some time. According to the tradition, we believe that some drops of her milk fell here and turned the grotto into the relic of the Virgin's milk. The name of this church is the Milk Grotto.
The traditional image of Jesus' mother as the Virgin Mary has been completely created by the church. Her original identity is now hidden. I noticed that everything's covered over in plastic. What's going on?
Yes, well, we're in the process of renovating the church. For years and years, we've wanted to make it look more like a house. And here, throughout the centuries, people are coming and they're burning candles and oil lamps. And because of this, the white stone has turned to the dark color. And now we're trying to clean it so that it looks more originally like the color of milk.
So when you clean this off, it will turn white again?
Just like you have right here
right,
in your
just
hands. You see how pure white the stone is inside?
Yeah.
It's absolutely pure white. And the further you go into it, the more white it becomes.
Wow.
And also, a few years ago, we had a woman from Vietnam, and she took a photo of Our Lady who was giving the milk. And it developed with 2 drops of milk coming from the photo.
Wow. So, in your tradition, the idea of Mary having any more children after Jesus is just a non-starter. Is it heretical for people to say that?
Well, I'm not here really to speak of anything that is heretical. My conscience is the Church. The Church teaches us what we're supposed to believe. This is why we have the dogmas of the Church, the teachings of the Church from the ancient fathers who fought all of these heretical problems in the Church.
So God said it, the Pope communicates it, and that seals it.
According to faith, according to what we believe as being the full truth.
Over the last 2,000 years, the Church has transformed Mary from a 14-year-old Jewish peasant into the figurehead of the greatest Christian cult. From a perpetual virgin, she became the Mother of God. Then in 1854, the Pope announced she had even been immaculately conceived.
She is Queen of the angels. She's Queen of the apostles, all prophets. She's the Queen of all saints. She's the Queen of confessors. She's the Queen of virgins. She's the Queen of martyrs. And in all of God's creation, she is the most important of creatures, chosen by God to be the mother of his only Son.
So she's number 1.
Next to God himself, yes.
In 1950, the Pope declared that when Mary died, her body was miraculously assumed into heaven. So her tomb is empty. Much of the evidence for this is taken from a 5th century non-biblical text that even some Catholic scholars now agree is valueless as history.
The apostles carried the couch and laid down her precious and holy body in Gethsemane in a new tomb. And for 3 days the voices of invisible angels were heard glorifying Christ our God. And when the 3rd day was ended, the voices were no longer heard. And from that time forth, all knew that her spotless and precious body had been transferred to paradise.
When the Transitus Mariae first appeared, the Church declared it heresy. The veneration of Mary is one of the most important cults in the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches. There are shrines dedicated to her all over the world. But check this out. This doctrine was the theological brainchild of a succession of church fathers and theologians. There's almost no evidence for her veneration in the Bible. And of course, as Mary's status rose, the brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ, her real family, were almost completely written out of the story.
I think this is actually to the detriment of Jesus, and particularly Jesus' humanity, because of course a human person has siblings. He grew up in an ordinary Jewish household. He grew up probably in a very noisy, very lively household where there's lots of other brothers and sisters, where there's grandparents, perhaps an extended family. And yet I think that picture has been lost because we tend to have this rather idealized picture of Jesus and his mother. There's sort of rather solitary pictures.
There is an alternative theory about Jesus' family tree. It states quite simply that like any other first-century Jew, he had a family. A mother, a father, 4 brothers, James, Joseph, Simon and Judas, and at least 2 sisters, Mary and Salome. For over 1600 years, the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches have seen this as heresy. In my quest for the secret family of Jesus, I have been invited to a Jewish wedding in Galilee in northern Israel. 2,000 years ago, there was another wedding in Galilee, a very special event that's recorded in the Bible, the famous wedding of Cana. But what most people forget is that if it was a wedding, it must have been a family occasion. One of the most famous miracles in the Gospels